Okay, so welcome to the Home Trails podcast, Jon and Henriette Albon.
Thank you very much. Thanks
Thank
for having
you.
us.
Yeah.
It's good. Thank you for agreeing to this. I know we were just talking pre-recording about brain fog and being a bit tired. So you've got an excuse for both of us forgetting about the time difference. So we're here now and we've made it happen. So appreciate you giving up some of your time because I know you are very busy, both of you, aren't you?
To be honest,
Well,
this is the least busy time of the year, I'd say. We're still very much in recovery mode after TGC.
Yeah.
So we haven't done that much in the past 2 days, I'll be completely honest.
Yeah, fair enough. Yeah, you deserve a rest, don't you, every now and then.
Is necessary.
Amazing. So as I gave you loads of warning about the superhero question, I'm sure you've had lots of time to think about an answer to the question that I always ask everybody that comes on the podcast for the first time. What is your superhero origin story? So how did you become the dynamic duo that you are in ultra running? Where, separately, how far back does this story go of ultra running, trail running, and obviously how you came to be this couple like dominating the trail running world?
You want to go first?
no, you go first.
I guess if all ultra runners are superheroes, then I very much started off as a non-superhero. So I
Yeah.
had like the most usual growing up you could possibly have, normal small town just outside of London called Great Dunmow, up in Essex. Went to normal school, normal friends, kind of shy kid. Didn't really like run that much, but then I did do sports day. If someone asked me to go running, I guess I could. And I actually played skate hockey. It's like ice hockey, but on wheels in a sports hall. So that was my
Oh
like
yeah.
childhood sport. And then I don't know, around sort of like 18 to 20, I quit hockey, and there was just a deep down need to stay fit for some reason. I wasn't training with hockey anymore, so I had to stay fit. So I went out jogging, and I had a little like loop from my parents' house that I'd go and do. It was about 6K. Do it like once, twice a week, and then gradually it turned into every day, and I entered into this obstacle race called Tough Guy, which was like the original obstacle race. I wanted to
Mm.
test myself as a man. And yeah, and I went and did it, and I really enjoyed the aspect of testing the fitness that I'd been working on with my running, and was working in London at some point, and then training just became what I did in the evenings. I didn't want to watch TV. I didn't want to go out drinking and socializing and trying to further my career. I wanted to go training, so I trained more and more. And then this one had asked me to move up to Norway, so I quit my job, moved to Norway. Couldn't get another job there, and at the same time, I won two big races in the US, both obstacle races, and got some
Mm.
prize money. So Henrietta said, "Well, why don't you just be a runner?" So then I was just a runner, and that's what I've been. That's what I've been since. And at some point, I guess I turned into a superhero because the focus turned from obstacle racing through to more ultra and trail running, like around the COVID time, and that's been sort of like my sole aim, competitive wise, for the past years now.
Yeah. Brilliant. I'll
Now I'm
let
gonna
you go.
match that.
Off you go. Well, you got to tell your story into mine as well.
Yeah, no, I do. Well, I mean, so as for me, I grew up always being active, did orienteering, played football, did dancing. But then I was the person who always tried very hard, but I didn't quite excel right to the top. And for some reason in my mind, there was no point doing it if you weren't like winning everything.
Mm.
And I came from a family as well that was just very focused on studying and getting like a proper job. So I shifted my focus, went to business school in Bath, actually, in the UK, did 4 years there, did some work placements in London as well, and was very serious and focused on work and school. So didn't do any sports around then, to be fair. John started doing his obstacle racing, and I was like, oh, that looks fun. I'm going to tag along. So then I actually ended up doing obstacle racing at quite a high level, I'd say between 2015 and before COVID. That was good fun. And then when COVID hit, I actually pretty much quit my job as an auditor, realizing I do not want to be an auditor for the rest of my life. I want to follow John wherever he's going and do that because that looks a lot more fun. So we found other ways of basically making money. I'm sure we'll chat about that later,
Yeah,
the
yeah,
Albon
absolutely.
app and Ascend as well.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I sort of, cut my strings to the normal work life in a way. Started training more, invested more time in that. Started doing more trail races, found that I really enjoyed the super long ones, and won a couple of races more recently. But I'd like to underline, I'm not a superhero. I'm just someone who tries really, really hard.
Yeah, but as a couple, we both met when we were super young. I think I was 17, Henrietta just turned 16. We had a long distance relationship between the
Wow.
UK and Norway for like 3, 4 years.
More like 5, 6.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
I lived close to Stansted. She lived close to her airport in Norway. So it just kind of worked out. She moved to Bath, where it was more difficult for me to see her because the M4 sucks.
Yeah.
She had two 6 month work placements in London. So then we lived together and found out that we functioned, as an actual couple in everyday life. And then it was the fateful decision for Henrietta to go back to Norway to study her master's, and I kind of tagged along. And yeah, it was actually Henrietta who was the runner before me. And I remember our first run together, I just started my little 6K loop. Henrietta came and joined, and because she beat all the guys at her school, I guess she just assumed that she'd wiped the floor with me. And then at some point during the run, she just went, "Ah, crap," when she realised that for some strange reason I wasn't that bad at running. And
Uh,
then from then on, I guess I was the runner of the pair, but you were always the runner to begin with.
yeah.
Amazing. Yeah, that's good. I've kind of I have followed your career, John, because I've always been a listener to the Bad Boy Running podcast. So you've been like always been like a regular guest on that podcast, haven't you, over the years? And I've kind of like followed your career as you were still going through doing OCR, weren't you, for a long time, and it was all that success that you had there. And then you started to then do more of the trail and ultra running. Do you miss that part of your life? The the OCR. You probably miss the prize money.
I do and I don't. It was a great part of my life, and I did enjoy the competitions. They did change a little bit towards the latter
Mm,
years and kind of like weren't exactly what I was used to doing before, but the community was great. The type of fitness I was going after was great, and to be a young, boisterous kind of athlete that wanted to be strong and fast and agile and work on all these different types of fitness, it was a lot of fun. But then, yeah, the prize money was good, but then I had to travel a lot. I had to win a lot. I had to really put the work in. And now it's just a completely different rhythm to life. I get to do more
mm,
like 3 or 4 races a year rather than
mm,
25 races a year. I can rely a little bit more on sponsorship money and then spend my time training and trying to get the absolute top level in a sort of like more of an established running discipline
mm,
rather than just competing weekend after weekend and
mm.
flying here, there, and everywhere.
Yeah, yeah. I suppose that yeah. So trail running, ultra running is like a career, isn't it? Whereas was OCR more about just winning and getting prize money and moving on to the next thing.
Pretty much, yeah, and it was also a very young sport, so it was kind
Mm,
of like it was changing and developing, and it wasn't as yeah defined as what trail running is now. So
mm,
it was getting pretty big at one point, but it wasn't kind of like as prestigious, I'd say, as trail. So I won a lot and I got a lot of titles, but then a lot of them I don't really think of as being proper titles. I guess,
yeah.
but that's just how I've always operated. I guess I've never given myself that much kudos because then I'm able to go on and do bigger and better things rather than give myself so many
Mm.
pats on the back that I don't sort of progress.
Yeah, yeah, that's fair enough. That's a good way to look at it. So Norway, then obviously that's your home originally. Yeah, Henriette. I'm gonna get your name wrong now. Keep wanting to say Henrietta because I know I've got a friend who's a Henrietta. I keep gonna call you
I
Henrietta.
use both,
So,
no worries. People call me everything.
Henriette.
But I'd go with Henrietta if I was you. I think that sounds nice. That's how I say it
Everyone
anyway.
calls me
Oh, do
Henrietta.
you? Do you say Henrietta?
Mhm.
Okay. So am I allowed to use that that
For sure.
privilege? Thank you. Because I will mess that up. So that was your obviously that was home, and then so was that an easy transition for you then, John, moving to Norway and settling over there? Was that difficult for you to do, or was it quite straightforward?
I wouldn't say it was easy, but I think the way I ended up living my life is that I see like outside the box, and I don't think of like that usual lifestyle that people have and that path we're
Mm,
set on when we go to school and then uni and then get a job.
mm,
I don't really see that as like the correct way for me to live my life anymore. So I guess I was open-minded and accepted challenges as they came and just kind of like embraced them. There are
yeah.
certain things that looking back on, I think, yeah, actually, like that did affect me a little bit. Like more darkness generally. It's like the
Mm,
sun, we do get sunshine during the winter, but it's just like a lot more dark. And I don't think it affected me that negatively. But then when I think about it, it is pretty tough a change. And I don't think I would ever have been able to see myself living in another country as a kid. Like I don't
mm,
think I'd ever see myself living outside that little town I grew up in. So,
mm.
but by following the path I've been on, I've just ended up somewhere that's just really exciting and really fun, but it's definitely nothing I could have ever envisaged.
Mm.
I'd like to add as well, I think one of the trickiest things when we moved to Norway actually was, well, correct me if I'm wrong, but John basically went full time as an athlete. I was studying pretty seriously at the time, and then I also went on to work as an auditor in like one of the big four companies. So there was a lot of focus for me on work and studying, and I felt like John actually, he just went out and had fun and trained and went on holidays. So there was this like underlying tension, and here's me working my ass off, whereas you get to just roam around and do whatever you want. Obviously, as I learned later on, that is not the case, but there was a little bit of tension there, I think, during those years in terms of just like how we functioned as a couple with so different
Mm.
lifestyles.
Yeah, yeah. But I suppose, yeah, like you say about the darkness thing, I suppose does that really make any odds? Like living in England, it seems dark. It's dark all the time anyway, doesn't it? So, especially the winter that we've just had here. I don't know what the winter's been like for you guys in Norway, but it's just been absolutely horrendous here. Just rain, 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 and just feels like spring's hasn't even started yet. It did feel like it got a little bit sunny, and then it's started raining again.
Yeah, it's just a whole nother level, I guess. And then even if I was to move up further north from where we are now
Mm,
and you'd have no sunlight during the winter, it'd be worse still. So I'm
mm,
sure that people that live in Scotland think everyone down south have got it easy, and people that live up in Norway think people in Scotland have got it easy. But it's one of those things. You get used to it, but it's just tough, and you have to adjust
yeah.
your lifestyle around it a little bit. I actually have a wake up lamp now, so it goes from red up to sort of
Yeah.
bright white light around 7 o'clock every day, and I find that that really helps, and that's something I wish I
Mm,
knew about earlier. And then in
yeah.
the summer, I have full on blackout blinds to kind of try and make it as dark as possible. So I
Yeah.
uh, I found ways to kind of deal with it, but
Mm,
it's one of those things that you don't really think about when you're gonna go somewhere, and then it dawns on you gradually like it is a different way of living. But the Norwegians have already got everything down. Like they have winter duvets, summer duvets. They have all these tips and tricks that they do to manage the different seasons, and it doesn't take long to fall in line.
yeah. More prepared for winter than we are, I suppose. Yeah. Um, Tell me about the Norwegian method then. So I know that obviously that's like a buzzword, isn't it? The Norwegian method, and I know it isn't just like a way of training. I know it's like it's more than that, isn't it? But is that something that you've kind of like fully embraced being over there? Because when in the UK we kind of see like you guys and Killian and everything, and we're like, well, clearly, like Norway is the place to be. That is what special sauce is over there that is making all these like amazing athletes. What is it about? Is that just something that we just hear and we see it on social media and stuff and on the news, or is there something genuinely there that's different?
It's the water, isn't it? No, I think at the highest level, it might possibly come down to just Norwegians' personalities are, as Henrietta said to begin with, what she's like. If they're going to do something, they do it really well,
Mm,
and they commit fully, and they absolutely go for it. So even with a small population, if someone decides to be a triathlete, they are going to do triathlon well. And even if they've got a
right.
full-time job or they've got other things going on in their life, that still sort of takes quite a high priority. And they're also they're very like fit people. I mean, they're out, they're very active. In order to relax, they have to exercise first. So that
Mm,
does sort of like result in some sort of fitness gains. But then there's also like a big movement of about how to train coming out of Norway. But that
yeah.
does differ slightly from sport to sport. And I guess that is like an area of research that we've spent quite a lot of time looking into.
Yeah,
Mm,
I
yeah.
think one of the defining elements of that is when it comes to intervals, for example, you're
Mm,
doing that with a lot of control. You're not doing like the VO2 max stuff, which perhaps is coming out more of like the US, say. Um, and that is an element of the so-called Norwegian method that we
mm,
very much adopt as well. We don't hammer those really hard, fast intervals. We prioritize sort of more like middle intensity intervals, and we stack that with a lot of volume as well, which is a key element, I think, of a lot of Norwegians endurance athletes training.
Yeah, so
yeah.
more time intervaling, but at a slightly easier work rate alongside lots of other training. Um,
There's no cutting corners either. You're building, like a lot of Norwegian athletes have a long-term perspective,
Yeah.
5 to 10 years. Nothing happens overnight, and you accept that, and you sort of just get your head down and do the work year after year, week after week, month after month. Yeah.
And I think they also really much just assume they will get really good. And if you have that mindset at some point, you will get really good. Whereas if you
Mm,
keep doubting yourself, then it's harder to actually put in the work. And it's not often that you hear Norwegians say, I just wish this or I hope that. It's kind of like they're going to put in the work to make that a reality rather than
right.
just sort of like expect it.
Yeah, that's great. That's good. Yeah, I've not thought of it that way. Like the mindset is different because yeah, in the UK it can be quite a negative thing, can't it? Like, oh, you what is it, the tallest, is it the tallest poppy or the tallest daisy syndrome, like gets chopped off, that if you think too much of yourself and people will always put you down. But if that is like the case, that in Norway everyone just believes that they are going to be great at something, that actually does have that psychological effect. Is that something that you, and I know this is like a bad question to ask coaches about training philosophy. That's the question that coaches don't want to say. If I say, what is your training philosophy? Is that a question that is offensive to you?
No, for sure not. Like, I love those questions. I think there's obviously never a correct answer because there's a lot of different ways you can skin a
Yeah.
cat, but there are usually very much some underlying philosophies that every coach will be trying to implement in a training plan. And we have endless discussions about this. So I kind of like, I think it's really fun, and I'm very open with all the training I do. Personally, I mean, we pretty much share absolutely everything. So if you
Mhm.
want me to answer that question, I certainly can.
I will add though that, I think the hard thing about that question is that to sum up
Yeah,
your approach to training in like 3 sentences, that is
that's right.
hard.
Yeah.
We can try.
What about like in a practical way then, how you sort of structure training then for people? As I know we'll obviously talk about the app and everything, but as coaches, is there a certain way that you structure things? You're talking about like the not doing the VO2 max stuff. Is there a certain thing that sort of flows all the way through the kind of training that you put out for people?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, there's two big things to think about from a higher level, which is load management. So how much training you're doing, and this has
Mm,
been the thing that we've talked about the most because lots of training is good, but how do you do lots of training without getting injured? So how you manage that load is really very important, and progressive overload is by far like that's the basis that I think that everyone should have built into training plans no matter what. So you're used to doing a certain amount of training and then you want to do a little bit more. So you get a training stimulus and then your body
mm,
adapts. And then when you get used to that, you do a little bit more. So training generally just gets more and more and more and more. And then through one
mm,
training block, you can build up to quite a lot of training. And then you'll race, you'll taper, you'll recover, then you'll start again and you'll build up to more and more and more, probably at a
mm,
slightly higher level. So it's kind of like that happens season to season, but then year to year. And then as time goes by, you're gradually doing lots of training and your body's adapting at the same time. Because if you do too much too soon, the body can't keep up and then injuries happen, or you just don't get better and you're training loads for absolutely no reason. Because like if you're not getting better, what's the point in doing that training?
yeah. Well, that's
I think
interesting.
also an important element of how we structure our training is that we will divide the entire year into different chunks and define what the focus is during those chunks.
Mm,
So we'll traditionally move from more base building training where the focus is on like gradually increasing the volume, having quite a lot of general fitness through cross training and whatnot, to then more specific training in a phase which we call sharpening. Then we'll do our tapering, which can be quite like condensed, like a 7 day to 10 day taper. And then we'll spend like now, we'll take like 3 weeks of recovery to really let the body sort of reset before we start that sort of base building phase again, but then adjusting for the fitness we have after 3 weeks of recovery, which is going to be quite low realistically. And then we sort of start the wave again.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah. So that's kind of, I know when I've sort of dived into like the way like CTS, the way that Jason Coop sort of used to sort of structure his training of doing like certain blocks of certain things, but like specificity, I got that word right for once, like closer to the race and stuff. Is are all sort of training philosophies very similar, or is there something that does stand out with the way that you guys coach that is different and is producing great results?
No, I think like everyone's going to have a slightly different way of blocking training and working out when you're going to be doing certain things. Some people just have a soup of everything all year. Some people have
Mm.
really clear blocks, like here's a VO2 max block, here's a
Yeah.
load block, here's a this block. We're a bit more gradual. We'll build our load very much like throughout the entire training period up to a
Mm.
race, and then gradually make the training closer to the race more specific. And we just find that that is like a bulletproof way
Mm.
to improve. And we kind of like I feel like we still train as if we're amateur athletes. We still follow the same golden principles that everyone should be following. And obviously,
Mm.
people try and get really clever, but sometimes you can get a bit too clever. And it makes complete sense. Gradually do more and more and more. The closer to the race, do more training like the race. And then you can't go too far wrong, in our opinion.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
simple, but it's surprisingly hard to execute well.
Mm. Yeah, yeah. I'm not surprised. Yeah, if it looks funny how I'm looking at you, if it looks like I'm looking up all the time, it's because my screen's broken and I've got you on a big TV behind my laptop. So when I'm looking at you talking to me, I'm kind of looking up. So if you did see me kind of looking up to the sky, it's not because I'm looking for inspiration. I'm just like looking at you like eye to eye, further off.
No, you're right. I'm just sorry, I'm coughing a little bit. I got picked up a little bit
I'll edit
before.
that bit out.
Yeah.
I
I'm just
probably
trying to
I probably
time
won't.
them when no one's talking, but it's surprisingly difficult.
Try and die in the background
Yeah.
off camera. Um, that's great. So I want to talk about the app. Do you want to talk about the app now, or should we talk about Transground Canaria first and then come to the app at the end, or do you want to dive? Are you happy to dive into it now?
It's entirely up to you, like I'd say.
Yeah, yeah.
Either's
So
fine.
while we're talking about coaching, yeah, I think that'd be great to sort of
Yeah.
to talk about. So it did start out as the album app, and it's now Ascent, is it?
Ascend.
Yeah, with a
Ascend.
D, ascend.
Ascend. Yeah, right. Okay.
We're going up in the
Um, so there's obviously AI is a big thing into it, and is this what was your thought behind starting your own training app then? Is this just a natural extension of the way that you coach and it just fit in, or was this sort of like seeing the trends of people doing this kind of thing and thinking that you want a piece of it basically?
No, really, I don't think we ever really planned to make our own app,
Well,
but
you got to tell the story.
we were
Go on, tell the
coaching
story.
a guy who is now a good friend. Turns out he was a software engineer, French guy living in Paris, and he was like, "We need to make this training philosophy into an app that more people can use because there aren't
Mm.
that many training apps around, and
Mm.
there aren't many philosophies like the ones that we were putting him through." And he found they were um, yeah, pretty special to be honest. So he was up for working on it.
Yeah, and I can
And
add as well, like if you have a one-to-one coach, obviously the price will reflect that because you're spending a lot of hours on one
Yeah.
person. So
Mm.
the idea as well was to bring this framework out to more like, the average Joe out there who can't afford a one-to-one coach, because we just felt like, this should be available to people.
well, I
And it
mean,
wasn't.
he thought it
Mm.
should be. To be honest, I just wanted to formalize my own philosophy so it was easier for me to follow. So I was in a selfish way wanting like the data analytics for trail, wanting a place to
Right.
like write all my workouts and put the timers so actually I could use the training and execute it better myself because training for trail running can be a little bit complicated. You've got ascent, you've got descent. It's not just flat roads. There's technical trails. There's all
Mm.
different sorts of trails. So to try and formalize all those philosophies and get them into a training app was going to help me, and I think it has helped me since. But it started off as Albon app. We called it that because we couldn't think of a better name. And to be honest, to begin with, it wasn't even go public. It was just for us to use
Right.
ourselves. We made it
Mm.
public. It was still Albon app, and then steadily it grew, it changed, it evolved. We launched a very new training system last April, which was like very much like more in lines with what I wanted to see the app developing into. Like the
Mm.
initial app was a lot more basic, and this new version very much answered the question of how much training, which is the
Mm.
golden question when it comes to training. How much should I be doing and when? Because it's definitely much a moving target. So as the app developed, as it became bigger and better, it kind of grew beyond just the two of us, and we wanted the name to reflect that. So we started discussing a name change late last year. Quickly settled on Ascend. There's just something about it that sort of like seemed to really, yeah, strike a chord. And we made the name change. I think that's the beauty of having like such a small team. We can pivot, we can turn, we can develop new things super quickly, and we put the name change through and haven't looked back.
Mm. But are you thinking, do you feel like this is like the next stage of coaching? Is this the way that it's gonna go for the masses kind of thing? Or do you think it will still be kind of people wanting a one-on-one with a person all the time? But I know that that's something that is you do have that option in there, don't you, in the app that you can message you. Is that AI driven or is that actually you that's responding to that?
So just to clarify to listeners, we have a so-called community wall or a social wall
Yeah.
where all people who have a profile, so all users can literally post their question. They can also choose to be anonymous. And you can tell how we deal with those questions.
Well, then every morning I look at them and answer them.
We sit there and type our answers.
Usually spending far too much time on each one, and it's like a labor of love. But no, there's no AI
Yeah.
involved in that those questions being answered, and even people on a free trial have access to that. So it's not something that
Mm.
people pay access to. We have one tier of member, and then they get absolutely everything. So I don't know. Like I think in the future, there's definitely going to be people that enjoy the AI driven kind of coaching where they're going to have ChatGPT coach them. I think especially for trail, that really falls short. And I still think there's a
Mm.
lot of pitfalls with
Mm.
that sort of approach. And I still think there's going to be a hell of a lot of people which want to have one-to-one coaching, even
Mm.
just paying that little bit of extra money to make sure that you think you're getting better taken care of is something that
Yeah.
people will end up doing. But I certainly do feel that what we're trying to offer is on par with personal coaching, obviously a hell of a lot cheaper, but then also gives you the tools to be able to coach yourself. So
Mm.
you use the app and you can make decisions, but it gives you a framework and guidance. It gives you those barriers along the bowling alley so the ball doesn't go off into the gutter. So
Mm.
we're there, we can help. The framework is there, but it also teaches you why you're doing certain things. So you get to know your own body, you get to know how to move
Mm.
workouts around, how to choose different workouts, and then
Mm.
hopefully that just increases the joy about getting fit because really it's not just about turning up to the start line and having a good result. It's about enjoying the whole process of getting fitter and then actually making yourself fitter using.
Mm.
Yeah, and I think also like the two of us have, I mean, we've never been coached by someone else, but we
Mm.
haven't drifted towards that either. Because I think we both believe that in order to be the best that we can be, we need to own and understand our own training and make
Mm.
decisions based on how we know ourselves.
Mm.
Because you have access to so much like information through your own body. And, ideally other people see that as well. And we're sort of giving them the tools to use their own sort of instincts and intuition together with a framework.
But then
Yeah.
as the app grows as well, the community helps. So now that community wall has moved beyond just people asking me questions. People ask questions about certain injuries that other people have had on there, and
Mm.
then other people come in and say, "Oh, I had this and that, and
Yeah.
this is how I dealt with it." Very much normally the advice is go and see a physio, get a scan, stop running until you know what's going on. But sometimes there are those magic little bits of advice,
Yeah.
or just
Mm.
feeling, "Oh, someone else has dealt with this before.
Mm.
They got better. This
Yeah.
isn't the end of the world," and that sort of
Yeah.
community helps. And
Uh,
community isn't something that I've ever had that much to do with, to be honest. But like the community with the app is something that I'm like really feeling quite proud of now. So
Yeah.
it's kind of nice.
That's it's funny you mentioned that about the injuries and stuff because you know, I've been running since probably 2002. I think I started running, doing half marathons, and sort of worked my way up, and then the last sort of like over sort of 12, 13 years been doing ultras and stuff. And over that time, I feel like I've had every single running injury that you can get. And I always felt that that was something that was kind of missing from trail running like world was having somebody tell you that it's going to be okay. I've had that injury before. I dealt with it this way, rather than you having to go to go and see try and get an appointment with your GP, try and see somebody, go and see a physio, and they just give you some exercises, and they don't really give you any hope. But having someone say to you, "Oh, I had that exact injury, and it only lasted this long, and then I was back to doing this, and this afterwards." I think that's kind of like reassuring, isn't it, for people to know that somebody else has gone through it and they're a runner like you. It's not a doctor. You know, you go and see a doctor and you say, "I've got this running injury," and you look at them, you're like, you know that they've never run a step in their life when you look at them. But hearing it from another runner, you feel reassured, don't you?
Yeah, for sure. I can remember the first time I got a little bit of shin splints from too much flat running and track running when I turned up in Bergen and moved to Norway. And I thought my leg would never heal. And I thought
Mm.
this is it, I'm gonna have this pain for the rest of my life. And it's surprising that then at some point a few months later you can't remember which leg it was. And that's the way it goes. And then the next time I got sort of the inklings, the ghost feeling of possibly a bit of tightness in the shin, I knew exactly what to do and try and
Mm.
nip it in the bud. And that's advice that I feel that then I could pass on to other people. Obviously, you need to act like with a bit of like caution because there's are some injuries which will come across the same, but they are very much different. But then there's
Mm.
also a lot out there that people have had for specific reasons too. Like I tried this pair of shoes and I got this pain. Other people have likely tried those shoes and got that pain. So
Mm.
there are definitely similarities between what everyone seems to get.
Yeah, definitely. Um, so the goal with the app then is you were sort of saying that it kind of teaches people to sort of know themselves. Is that kind of like is that like a bad business model then that you're teaching people to be able to train themselves and coach themselves, or are you just teaching them to rely on the app, but they can still make their own decisions? Because I thought that was interesting how you said, when I looked at the app and I was thinking, would this work for me? I love the way that you can still have the same goal, but alter the way that you get to it. So I've never been coached, and I always kind of thought that I would never ever be able to be coached because the way that my life changes on a daily basis and I have to fit things in and move things around. I always thought that I would be a coach's absolute nightmare with trying to stick to a plan. But when I saw that, I thought, well, that's interesting because you're giving like a bit of an out there, aren't you? That if you can't do a certain workout, you can pick another workout that gives you the same outcome. Explain how that works then, how technically how that works in the app.
Yeah, I mean, at the beginning of every single week, you have to plan your training week. So you
Mm.
can't plan like a month in advance. And the reason for that is that we know life happens and we know,
Mm.
you can be sick, you can have lots of work going on. So you need to adjust your plan on a weekly basis.
Yeah, so we base that plan off your fitness on that exact day. So that means we can plan the correct amount of training for you, and then we can't know how fit you're going to be in a month's time because you could do lots of
Mm.
training or you could do
Yeah.
no training. So if you do no training for a month later, your training is going to be very different if you've stuck to the schedule and
Mm.
progressively overloaded. So each week that training load will be generated for you by the app, but you can also choose how quickly you grow that fitness. So it could be you've got a really busy week but you still want to get some good training done, you could choose a build, but like a lighter build week. It could be you've got a week off work, you're in for it, bit of a training camp, you can do a big
Mm.
build week and you can do more training. So just having that power over your own week's training that you're still going to get to a destination, but one way a little bit slower and one way a
Mm.
little bit faster. And then actually once you're into that week, you can move workouts onto different days. And that's completely fine. Like I think if you've got a big ultra in 3 months' time and a coach says, no, you must do your intervals on a Tuesday, not a Wednesday, I think that's like just complete crap. Like if you can get those intervals done on a Wednesday, but you can't get them done on a Tuesday, just do them on the Wednesday. And obviously it changes like how the rest of the week could be could be put together, but you can move those workouts around and then learn, okay, these intervals, I feel like this afterwards. So the next day's long run, probably not a good idea. I'll move that one to the next day, but drag that recovery run into the day after the intervals, for
Mm,
example. So you kind of like learn to think, okay, last time I did this workout after the intervals, like I felt that niggle in my leg, so I'm gonna attack this a little bit differently next time. And that's like the question about like whether people can coach themselves and not need the app anymore. I would be absolutely lost without the app because of the data analysis with it telling you how much training you should be
mm.
doing. It's very difficult to feel that like it would be January 1st and I'll be down there in the gym, 3 gym sessions that day, completely overdoing it, not being able to walk the next day. So you need a system in place which helps guide that
Mm,
training load because it is very hard on such a long time scale to get the timing right. So you do your
mm,
biggest weeks just before the race. I was always doing my biggest weeks 2, 3 months before the race, and then knowing that then that would peak my shape. And it's kind of either maintaining that fitness or just trying to sort of like hold on to it for another 2 months where you just get more and more tired. So no,
mm.
the app is definitely still very much necessary, even from the person that has wrote most of it.
Amazing. Yeah, that's I'm almost sold on it. I've been looking at it and thinking, is it something for me? Because that was the thing that's sort of sparked my interest, the fact that you could alter it week by week. And I so used to the idea of here's your plan for the month, you've got to do it, that kind of thing. So, but that's obviously like the old school way of coaching people into doing a
Yeah,
monthly
and
plan.
that can work, especially for people that like
Mm,
to tick boxes and will stick to it and don't have
yeah.
many other life stresses going on. Set training
Mm,
plans can be completely fine. It's just
yeah.
they are like a light switch. They're either off or on. So you're either going to stick to
Mm,
it or not stick to it. Whereas with our system, it does feel like you can kind of think, okay, I need a deload week this week. I'm going to take my deload week. And then the app will then adjust the following couple of weeks training because you would have lost a tiny bit of fitness. Then you're going to start
mm,
maybe from 1 step back so you can take another 3 steps forward rather than
yeah.
the plan just saying unless you're taking steps forward you just fall off the
Yeah.
bandwagon and there's no jumping back on to the plan 2 weeks later.
Mm, yeah, that makes complete sense. Yeah.
I don't know if we mentioned, but so it syncs with Strava, and you don't actually
Mm,
need a premium Strava account. You can just have a free account. So we're constantly sort of reading what workouts you are doing. So it is
mm,
actually basing the whole thing off your training history for the past 6 months or more, and what you're doing every single week. So
mm,
So what we are trying to do is really like create like a digital twin of you in the app.
yeah.
And we analyze different types of your fitness. So one type of fitness is how well your legs can take that pounding of an ultra race. Another type of fitness is how well your heart and lungs can deal with just breathing whilst you're moving for many hours on end. And we
Mm,
create two different numbers to represent those types of fitness. So we can
mm,
train one, or we can train the other, or we can train them both together.
yeah, I've
And then
seen that.
that's
Mm,
how we can like really try and personalize the training to you. Because if you're already kind of maxed out with how much running distance you can do each week, your legs are really well prepared for the distance, but your hours could be up. You could do a bit of maybe biking or something like that to sort of like try and increase your cardio fitness. We'll see that in your digital twin, and the app will
mm,
start planning that in for you if that's what you want to work on.
yeah, that sounds good. Right. Okay. You've almost fully convinced me
Do you
to
want
get
us to
the.
try and deconvince you? Like there are cons to the system we've made, but
yeah,
it's very complicated because it's trail training for trail running isn't simple. So we've made a
Yeah.
very
Yeah.
complicated system, but every day we're trying to make it simpler and easier to
Mm,
use and easier to understand right out the box.
mm,
Most people after 2 weeks they get on with it. It's just you need to have a bit of trust and a bit of patience
yeah.
and get into the system because it works like no other training system out there.
yeah, and I mean
Yeah.
we're a super small team. We are learning as by doing essentially.
Mm,
The onboarding, especially those first couple of days in the app, could be set up better for the user. So it is a bit of a steep learning curve. We are working on making that transition smoother for everyone. But if you stick with it, invest a bit of time in learning how the system works, it can really take you far. And I think when you've paid X amount of money to enter a race, or you're going abroad to Chamonix to do a race in
mm,
6 months' time, those couple of extra hours now will be
yeah.
well worth it,
Worth
hopefully
it.
further down the
Mm,
line.
And the system will tell you what to do today, ready for a race in 6 months' time. So it's not
mm,
like you need to wait to start that 3 month training plan or
mm.
2 month training plan for your big race. And if anyone does have any problems, they can message through, especially using the social wall. We're more than happy to answer any questions. And like I said, it is a labor of love.
And it's 2 weeks for free. So you can test it out and then leave
Brilliant.
it.
Right. I think that is a good enough advert for the app. I think
Thank you.
Moving
we've done it
on.
justice. Amazing. Well, I mean, obviously, what I want to move on to is Gran Canaria, and obviously, the app is proof. You two are proof that the app obviously works, doesn't it? Because you both did did great, didn't you? You both won your individual races, didn't you? So talk about your prep for that race and your reasons for wanting to do it and how it how it actually went down on the day.
Well, the reason we wanted to do it was because I said to John, we're doing it again. I need to go back. Because I had a bit of a niggle before last year and I had a bit of a rough entry into the race essentially, and I wanted to train for it properly using the app. So I actually wrote a Substack, which you can find the link to that on my Instagram bio, detailing how I trained using Ascend. So I won't dive into the details there, but essentially use the app with the principles we've talked about, like progressive
Mm,
overload and whatnot.
Yeah, for me, it was like Henrietta wanted to go back. North Face sponsored the event. It made complete sense. I came
mm.
second last year, so I actually had a reason to
Yes.
go back. And yeah, we both really love the island too. It's some really nice trails up on the top section of the island. The beginning and end is like a little bit less nice trail running, but no, the top section really makes up for it, and it's some really nice trails. So I mean, I started my training block for this race back in end of October time, and
Mm.
then just progressively overloaded all the way up until about 10 days before the race, which is when I started tapering. So I think I went from 80, 90 kilometers a week to more like 145 kilometers a week for my biggest weeks. And yeah, I mean, I managed to do what I didn't manage to do last year, but then it was completely different course, completely different weather, different
Yeah.
competitors. So nothing ever stays the same with trail, but it was a really great feeling to actually manage to cross the line first this time.
Yeah, I know. I was following it. I got up Saturday, it would be Saturday morning, wouldn't it? Yeah, Saturday morning. I got up and put the live feed on, and it was you were with Josh, and you were behind him, like you were very close together, and the commentators were sort of noting the fact that you were just power hiking, but Josh was still running, wasn't he? So he was like running small steps, running ahead, like, but you were going at the same speed. You were just power hiking up, and he was like running. Um, is that just like a snapshot of a moment in the race, or was that something that because I didn't get to watch the rest of the race, I didn't see what happened. So is that something that was that happening a lot during the race that you were sort of waiting for him to sort of wear himself out?
I'd say that was probably a bit of a snapshot in the race. Like that was a really
Yeah.
pivotal moment. So the group dynamics were a bit strange for the first 6, 7 hours. There's a group of four of us, and like who's working on the front, and then who drops back, and what happens to the pace. But I feel like me and Josh did our turns on the front, and we did like yeah push the pace of the race to begin with. But then once it whittled down to just me and him, I knew I
Mm.
had to be quite tactical. And I guess Josh is a teammate. I guess I like know some of his strengths and weaknesses, and that was all going through my head at the time. But the key thing which I locked onto was as we left the aid station, I think I was 10, 15 meters ahead. His crew shouted something like full gas now, or like absolutely go for it. And in my
Mm.
mind, I was thinking, wow, there's still like 50, 55K left with a lot of climb, and it's still tough from here. Like, we're obviously
Mm.
going to be trying hard, the two of us, but there's no sort of, sprint finish from
Mm.
now. And when we hit the bottom of that climb, it did seem like a sprint finish. It was Josh just seemed to go into run mode no matter what, music
Mm.
in, caffeine gels, like absolutely going for it. And I figured this can't last forever, especially the fact that he
Mm.
still got his jacket on and it was getting warm. So
Mm.
I figured, okay, I can't let him have a gap because that's not going to be a good thing. So I need to try and keep the gap to about 10 meters, but I also need to be extremely smooth. So where he might
Mm.
burn some matches here and there on some steep sections and still trying to run, I'll just try and be very, very smooth. And that's exactly how it played out. We got halfway up the climb, Josh started to slow down a little bit more. He then said, I'm going to stop and take off my jacket. I'd already taken it off on the descent. So I cheekily said, I'll just go by then. And then that was it. I thought, this is
That was
my
it.
time. So then I proceeded to burn all of my matches to try and make that gap. And thankfully I did get the gap. And I knew if I got out of sight, that's quite demoralizing.
Yeah.
And then I'd have to make that stick. Got to the top of that climb. That was the last major climb of the race, and then realized I had about 42k left of the race to try and hold that gap. At which point I thought, oh my Lord, what have I done? So then
But
I
it
did make
worked.
it did make it
But it
happen.
worked.
Like that's finishing off a race like that can be tough sometimes. You don't know the gaps to behind. It's sort of like it's a different sort of feeling trying to push yourself alone. But yeah, it did work out. I made it to the finish line, and yeah, it was good. Unfortunately, Josh. He was trying his absolute best to catch me. I think he did burn a few too many matches here and there. Then
Mm,
he actually got caught himself by Hannes.
yeah.
So it was myself to win. Hannes came second, and then Josh
Mm,
Josh third. So a great run from both of us. Like we both ran really well last year as well, and I was really impressed with his performance.
mm. Because your teammates, does it, you know, how does it feel when you're in those positions with with a fellow teammate? Does it all go out the window, or do you have like a bit of an understanding that because I know you probably never do this, but it does happen occasionally that people will run in together, won't there, and take first and second together, not holding hands, but that has happened
Oh no,
before.
no, no,
I
no.
don't think that's something that either me or Josh would be doing anytime soon. I know
But it
some
does
athletes
happen,
do,
doesn't it?
but yeah, no, I mean I'm paid to race. Like that's why I'm not an influencer, I'm a racer. So
Yeah.
I'm gonna race. And I know there are special circumstances where you might have helped each other a lot through the
Mm,
race, and then it's more of a survival race than kind of a racy race. And then I can see it, but like no, it's
mm,
very much, especially that far away from the finish line. There's not going to be. It's
yeah.
going to be to the end. I think that's what people wanted to see
Yeah.
from us.
They want to see that. Yeah.
But no, it's interesting. We're on the same team, but then we're individuals, and we want to win.
Mm.
And he got me at UTMB like convincingly. I even dropped out, so he beat me there. So I was very much
It's
like
only
wanting
fair.
to
Yeah.
return the
Payback.
return the favor. Um, for sure, but no, it is one of those things. It's an interesting when you're both on the same team, but then you are competitors, and I think we worked together well to begin with.
Mm,
Actually, like I think we collaborated well up until at least the halfway mark. There was one point where I did a shoe change and managed to catch him back up. And in the process, we put maybe like 50, 60 meters into harness. So I kind of was looking at Josh going, we can do some damage here, kind of, like we can rid ourselves of this guy. So that's what
yeah.
we kind of ended up doing. We worked together still from there. And then we got through to the header, like two-thirds of the way through the race. And then it was almost like this okay, Josh has put his music in. Now it's like me v him. We've got rid of Hannes. I think Tom had dropped out by that point. It was
Mm,
like between the two of us in our minds, and then we went at each other.
mm. So what was the weather like then? So obviously there was a lot of talk about the weather being pretty brutal overnight. Is that obviously Tom dropped out? Was that hypothermia that he was suffering with? Saw pictures of him sort of putting lots of coats on and not feeling sorry for himself.
Yeah, there's no comment. Like but from the weather at UTMB, that was like a lot worse than it
Right.
was on the island. So I'm sure there was like a few different reasons
Something else,
as to
yeah.
why Tom dropped out. Like, well, I haven't looked at like his race or the footage or spent too much time thinking about it. But like, it was rough. It was tough. We put jackets on. Tom and Hunters both had arm sleeves and gloves as well. So it was windy, it was wet, it was cold, it was sort of like around 0 to 5 degrees. It wasn't very nice running conditions, but as long as you kept
Mm.
moving and your energy
You're
was
right.
up, you could keep your temperature up, and I think that's really key. As soon as your
Mm.
legs give out a little bit, you stop moving as efficiently. That's when you can end up starting to get
Mm.
cold, and especially if you were to say stop, wait for your crew to come pick you up within that 10, 15 minutes waiting for them, I can imagine you getting extremely cold. So
Yeah.
it wasn't it
Yeah.
wasn't very nice running conditions. But then with the island, the north side is like that. The south side, it was almost like far too hot. So I had ice from the last aid station. Is
Wow.
this strange moment when the body says, wait a sec, I had to start sweating. Like, what do you mean? Like I've been trying to keep us warm for hours now. And yeah, it takes a little bit of time, but you get sweating and it does get very warm for sure.
Yeah, amazing. And how was your race?
Great. No, it was fine. I was behind in sort of third place until roughly the eight hour mark, and then I overtook second place around then, and then around the 10-hour mark, I overtook first place. Turns out there's a bit of carnage behind me happening, which I didn't really
Mm,
know about, so I just sort of ran my own race from then on, pushing the pace as much as I could. Obviously, because it had been quite cold in the night, I think all of us females especially were struggling with being cold, like muscles being quite crampy, feeling
mm.
nauseous, that sort of thing. But I'd say compared to the others, I was fine. The others really, really struggled. And in the end, that resulted in me winning by too much, in my opinion. So in a
Was it
way,
90 minutes?
Are
Was
they
it
going back
90?
next year?
Was it 90 minutes? Was it 90 minutes?
yeah, just over 90 minutes. So
Wow,
I mean,
that
I
is.
ran alone from the 10-hour mark. I ran alone before that almost as well because, there's big
Yeah,
gaps forming and there weren't that many guys actually. Yeah, I came 10th overall, so there weren't
overall,
like a
yeah.
huge amount of guys around me actually either. So, looking back, it was a lonely race, but I'm actually really happy with how I ran in the final 2, 3 hours. I managed to push well once my sort of body came back to normality after having
Mm,
been quite cold.
mm,
But yeah, I mean, I learn a lot from Jon. I learn a lot from studying the guys' field, and we talk about it a lot as well. And I can't help but go away from the race looking at all the areas where I and other females as well can improve because I feel like
mm.
I was hoping like the field would be more competitive, but in the end, actually, a lot of the top females didn't make it to the start line due to various reasons, be it injury or travel issues or whatnot. So that was a big shame because I was very much looking forward to racing more.
Yeah.
And winning by 90 minutes, you don't feel like the win is that sweet. But at the end of the day, I ran a strong race. It was a stronger
Mm.
race than last year, although my time was about 15 minutes worse. But the conditions made it very tricky. And I think Jon and that were, they were 40 minutes behind what Caleb did last year, I think. So,
Yeah, we lost a lot of time mainly because the conditions is very muddy. We ran in a river for
Yeah.
about 3K at the beginning where it's normally not a river. But
Wow.
also the pacing dynamics between our lead group didn't mean that we were chugging away all the time. It was a bit more of a Tour de France start with kind of like a bit of
Yeah.
stop start. Like, what's the point in attacking during the night kind
Mm.
of deal. But it definitely was a slower course compared to last year, both because of the weather, but also the route was slightly different. But Henrietta talks quite a strong game about the execution and how like her execution was quite strong, but she made quite a big mistake actually right at the start, didn't you?
oh yeah, I started it. I saw it was going to be 15 degrees, and
Almost ruining my race as well, I'd say.
yeah, both Jon and I walked out of the hotel room wearing our merino wool tops, thinking it was going to be quite chilly from the start. But I mean, turns out 15 degrees is pretty warm,
Mm.
especially when it's quite humid.
Yeah.
So Jon managed to change it to a t-shirt. I didn't quite think that far ahead, and essentially ran the first 2 hours in a merino wool top, sweating my
Mm.
arse off, drinking 500 ml an hour. So pretty early on, I was very dehydrated. And that was probably also why I did slow the pace down because I just knew
Mm.
what lied ahead. And so I let like those two other females go pretty early on and just ran my own race,
Mm.
which paid off in the end.
I think if I
Yeah.
had stuck to what you said I should do, which was starting in the long sleeve, because we had to carry the bad weather kit, which one of the pieces was the long sleeve top, then I think I would have been very hot in the first couple of hours.
Mm.
And I wore a t-shirt for the entire race in the end. So I think like that was the correct clothing strategy for me, because paired with a jacket, that was more than enough
Just enough.
for me
Yeah.
to keep warm. So it's interesting that just like the simplest decision at the beginning of the race made such
Mm.
a massive deal. And I was just glad I got to the start line 5 minutes early, kind of noticed what everyone else was wearing and how warm it
Straight
really
away.
was, and then changed into the t-shirt that I had with me. So thank God.
Stress. Oh, stressful that is, that kind of thing. Yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
Kit stress is another level of stress, isn't it, with a race? And then afterwards, like once you've done the race, you're like, oh, why was I worried about that stupid little thing to do with? But then I suppose that could be it could be a race ending decision, I suppose, as well, could it? The fact
I
that
think
you
for
can
me,
play
yeah, because if I had to kind of stay with the lead group and the gaps were a bit smaller, so 5 or 10 minutes at the beginning could have made a massive difference. But no, it's the same with obstacle racing. You're always going to stress about something.
Mm.
Whether it was like an obstacle race filled with the easiest obstacles, you'll stress about the hardest one of the lot. And if it was an obstacle race filled with like the hardest ones, you'd always stress about the hardest one of those as well.
Mm.
And it's the same with ultra running. You're always going to find something to stress about.
There's always something to stress about. Um, what are your obviously your sort of training philosophy is the same and you train in a similar way. Do you both approach racing in the same way? Like if you have race tactics, is that something that you discuss as a couple, the way that you're going to approach a race? Do you advise each other on how you should approach racing a race?
To be honest, personally, I haven't got many race tactics that I think about before a race. I have my strengths and my weaknesses, and for me, when I do an ultra, it's more a question of how can I play to my strengths and how can I sort of reduce my weaknesses.
Mm.
And then I pace the really long effort based around that more than what's happening around me. Because at least where the female racing is at the moment, I feel like if you can just have a solid race throughout the entire thing, you'll do quite well. It's not
Mm.
like in the guys' field where you're, like John said earlier, there's weird dynamics going on and who's pulling and who's not and this and that. For me, it's more of a how can I just do as well as I can and then sort of leave the others to do their thing.
Because I did hear somebody sort of describing your race tactic, like somebody, I can't remember who it was, but somebody was talking about the race and saying that you had kept yourself like quite steady all the way through the race, like pace wise. And that had worked really well because although you weren't at the front to begin with, like the others sort of fell off and you just carried that momentum through. Is that like a conscious thing that you're doing, just keeping yourself evenly paced?
For sure, but I mean, if you look at the best marathoners, they'll start off at the pace they can sustain closer to the finish, and I'm sort of doing the same thing. Whereas what I keep seeing is people are going off really, really fast, and
Yeah.
after 4 to 6 to 8 hours, they've burnt all their matches. And I just know when I run those first couple of Ks, I can afford to go a bit faster than what I'm comfortable with. But as soon as I go into like higher intensities, I'm burning matches like crazy. And so, my game plan is to stick to the pace that works for my body for this effort.
I think
Mm.
our training philosophy is very much to try and increase the speed we can run at whilst being under LT1. So
Mm.
everyone talks about LT2 lactate threshold, and a lot of people don't do training to try and improve their lactate threshold. But really, for ultra running, the gold standard is to run as fast as you can without even having any cardiac drift
Yes.
at all.
Yeah.
So that's kind of like the style of training we're trying to do to try and improve that. And actually, it can even be harder if you have a faster threshold speed. So if you've been training loads of threshold, you've got yourself into really quick speed, you start a
Mm.
race and you feel this is absolutely fine. Like
Mm.
I train at this effort level, my threshold speed is really fast. But what you really want is to be going like sort of like having your LT1 closer to your LT2 so you can have a slightly slower speed, but for a very long time. And I guess
Mm.
that might be what's happening to some of the girls when they start, they feel it's completely easy
Yeah.
but they haven't done the training in order to sustain a slightly slower speed for a very long time. They've been doing
Mm.
kind of more like sexy roadrunner kind of training, possibly. But
Yeah.
it's
So
yes,
is this something that you sort of build into the app and the way that you coach to be doing longer, sort of more, would you call it more of like a tempo kind of pace, or is that too fast? Like a long tempo?
So
yeah.
all the intervals are happening between LT1 and LT2. And because they're often quite long in duration, like we might do sort of 8, 10, 15-minute reps,
Mm.
it'll almost automatically be closer to your LT1 rather than
Yeah.
your LT2 because you need to get through the
Because you can't,
interval.
yeah, you can't
But
can't sustain it. Yeah.
but that's only even if you're going to be doing any intervals at all. So all my training last year, up until maybe 4 or 5 weeks before the races, I did no intervals. I just did zone 1 and zone 2 training.
But you
Mm.
did steady running. So you need to talk
Yeah,
about
so
steady
so
running.
zone 2 training, like steady running, is kind of more like one step beneath those tempo intervals. So they're kind of, you feel like you're working well and you're being very efficient and you're striding out, but you're not into that sort of like
Mm.
almost threshold kind of interval realm. And steadily increasing how much of that you're doing each week is great speed training for trail runners because it's very specific. So it's very rare that I'll be starting an ultra race going faster than my steady zone two kind of pace. So with that approach, you can do a lot more training in a week because the faster you go, the more recovery you're going to be having to do. So yeah, last year I did actually hardly any intervals at all. And I think that's very different. People have still got this idea
Mm.
that you need to stick to 80/20 and you need to do your
Mm.
intervals because otherwise you won't get fitter. Whereas actually that sort of like intensity distribution does take a backseat to the load management and just doing more and more load. So if you can do more load by cutting out some of the intervals, I'd say that's like a better approach
Mm.
for ultra running at an elite level and especially at a lower level because many people can just get fitter by just running a little bit more. So to add that complication and that stress of trying to then do intervals and having the extra injury risk associated with it, sometimes
Mm.
it's not worth it. You're better off
Mm.
just going for an extended easy run instead because that way the next day you can go for another easy run rather than having to take a rest day.
Right. That makes complete sense. That's interesting. That is. Yeah. Yeah. Do like the sound of that. Yeah. We're going back to the app again, aren't we? We're selling the
Of
app
course.
again. Get those ads in there. So now that that's done, then what's the plan? Because obviously it's like we're still early in the year, aren't we? What is the plan for both of you for the rest of the year then, race wise?
Well, Henrietta makes plans, so I'll let her.
I make all the plans. I think the next big, well, not big goal, but the next goal race will be Mont Blanc 90K for both of us.
When's that?
But
When is that?
end of June.
Hmm.
And then obviously the big goal is to both get to the start line of UTMB this year. I had a DNS last year after a niggle, so I've learnt my lesson, follow the app.
And I've done my mandatory DNF, so now I've got that out of the way. I guess I can continue to bigger and better things. So it'll be exciting to go back to do UTMB. I felt like it was a bit harsh that I'd never done the course before and it was bad weather. And
Yeah.
that's really tough because I'm just learning everything for the first time and in the
Mm.
worst conditions. And it really
Mm.
showed like Tom had such a strong race, even though it was bad weather. But I kind of felt like I was at a slight disadvantage as he was now at TGC, not knowing the course
Mm.
as well, but then having the bad weather, it makes everything that much worse. So looking forward to going back to UTMB. And I would like to do a couple of local projects as well. And I would like to go and do a few shorter races, just more for like kind of fun. And we'll see. Like I wanted to go to UTS and do one of the shorter distances, but it's very much how are we or I going to recover in the next couple of weeks. So we'll
Mm.
take at least 3 weeks to first recover, then gradually build back to training, and then we can start that
Yeah.
progressive overload again. We're
Yeah.
doing more and more load and take a good 3 weeks in order to get that process down.
Mm. Well, surely you could come over and do a UTS race now because they're all really easy now, aren't they? Now they've changed the course.
Apparently so. Like I can see both sides of the story there. It's so hard with landowners and farmers, and I feel
Um,
for the athletes that wanted to go out. We actually recommended the 100K course to a friend, Norwegian, who lives here, who's a great runner. He loves technical terrain, and I thought that would be
mm.
such a nice course for him. And now I haven't actually looked into the new course, but maybe I'm going to go and apologize. But we'll see. Like it's a lovely place to run, no matter what trails you're on, and I really enjoyed the course last year and the area last year, and they've had such good weather the past 2-3 years in a row now. So maybe it'll
Mm.
be again.
Yeah, yeah, maybe, yeah. What is your, and I know this, I don't want to sort of end the podcast on a negative note, but what is your sort of feelings about everything that's got, because it's been a bad week, hasn't it? So UTS with all this, the course change and stuff, and then Aurea events like Dragon's Back and everything, they've folded this week, haven't they? So it's like it feels like a bad week for trail running. What are your sort of insights, sort of from a professional running sort of insight kind of thing, looking at it?
I guess like we touched on the UTS thing, but more like with Shane and Ori events, it's like it's a real shame because they're old school, really cool events, but they're also maybe events that don't make that much money. They're not as
Mm.
mass participation-y. They're a bit more
Yeah.
niche. They're longer, so they cost a lot to put on, but then you have fewer athletes. So it's really tough to try and yeah, keep those races pure and not try and have shorter distances with thousands of athletes, which is going to be maybe more lucrative. But it's also really tough because those events are really expensive to enter into. So if there are some athletes out there that are going to be losing their entry money, that's a big shame as well.
Mm.
So hopefully someone swoops in and can at least organise the races this year so those athletes get a chance on the course. And
Mm.
if anything, I'm a little bit upset because I've always wanted to do Dragons back, and
Yeah, yeah,
I thought it would be so
yeah.
fun, and it was
The
on the
given,
bucket list.
yeah. Yeah, that's something that a lot of people have been saying this week. They're like, "Oh, I really wanted to do that race. I've been planning to do that race." It kind of just shows, doesn't it, that you got to just do it. Just go out
Yeah,
and do
pretty
it.
much. Yeah,
Yeah,
you got to do it, and you got to
yeah,
enter it early enough so you can train well for it, and go for it. Because none of us are getting any younger. I think what Dragons Back look like a 20, 22 year hiatus between like when it was first running and then when it
yeah,
starts up
yeah.
again. So
Mm,
who knows? Maybe in 20 years.
yeah. Or maybe next year under a different name. Who knows?
We can only hope.
Yeah.
We can only hope. Yeah, excellent. Right. So for people to sort of follow you, both of your sort of journeys, where do you want to sort of direct people to? Obviously, we're going to direct people to the app, aren't we? So everybody who's watching or listening to this, if you're thinking about training for this year, if you've got a race, you've got a goal in mind, then where can people just find the app through your both of your pages on Instagram? Go through the links there.
Yeah, so we both have it in our Instagram bio. Ascendtrail.app is the handle on Instagram. And you can find us both. Probably Instagram's the best place to follow. Jon Albon, Henriette Albon. And then we have our own podcast as well, The Albon Way,
Mm.
where we dive into our own training, our race goals, talk about training theory as well. Lots of fancy stuff. So
Yeah. I don't know.
Yeah.
Just feels like I keep telling you what I have for breakfast. Yeah, so yeah, I think there's a website for the app as well, which is always like a good way to get information, but it's available on Android and on Apple. So 2 week free trial, just download it, make an account. You've got to put in your threshold speed and threshold heart rate for the data analysis and link up your Strava. And once that's done, then you can get in and see an analysis of the past 6 months worth of training data and then get into the social and
Mm.
start asking us how to use the thing.
Brilliant. That's awesome. Well, I appreciate you both coming on and giving up some of your time. I know you've had a busy schedule and you deserve a bit of a rest now. So enjoy the rest of your weekend and try and relax. I appreciate you coming on and giving us your time. Thanks.
No, thank you. It's been
thank
fun.
you.
Brilliant. Thanks for listening, everyone. Cheers. Bye bye bye.